Today, Derek and I are breaking down the 2021 Clemson recruiting class. We're going to be going through each member of this class, breaking down our thoughts as fans of Clemson football on how we feel like these players are going to fit in to the Clemson culture and the Clemson program moving into next season. Again, we're just two Clemson grads that love nothing more to talk a little bit more about Clemson football. So stay tuned, stick with us, help us out, like and subscribe as we break down the Clemson 2021 recruiting class.
Wide receiver Beaux Collins. He's out of Bellflower, California. He's a 4-star recruit, number 12 overall wide receiver, the 9th best player out of the state of California, and the 82nd overall recruit in the country. He's already 6'3", 195 pounds. So he can add a little bit more weight, but he's not 6'3", 175. He has a decent frame already to build on. And like the other two players, already enrolled, and he enrolled in January. Erik, what's your one word for this recruit?
My one word for this recruit is a throwback. It's in sync. And I'll tell you why it's in sync. It's in sync because he played with DJ Uiagalelei for 2 seasons in high school. This kid's coming out of California. He looks great. I'm super excited about him. I mean, if he puts on weight, he could be the next Mike Williams. If he stays slender, he could be the next T. Higgins. Like, wow. Yeah. He really has any route to go. But I think the biggest thing for him is going to be the fact that DJ is going to be a first-year starter, and Beaux Collins brings with him this need and this understanding that they have already. They already have this in sync together. And so he potentially could have some playing time his freshman year, just seeing how DJ gets along with this wide receiver group. We talked about it, and we'll talk about it more, what the depth that we have at wide receiver right now. It's young, but we've got some talented kids. What are you thinking, Derek?
I couldn't agree more. I think you and I were kind of on the same track here. I have Shake and Bake. Talladega, great movie with Will Ferrell, and they do the shake and bake maneuver in order to get around different cars in order to win the race, and like that's what I just picture with these two. Like obviously they've got great chemistry. You don't go from California across the country to South Carolina if it wasn't for that connection. And so obviously they're friends. Obviously they've been already throwing the ball together before, and unlike the last recruit, Jake Brenningstool, I think Beaux Collins will make an impact even as a freshman. And when you look at the wide receiver room, it's kind of shocking to see when you have EJ Williams and you have Justin Ross, you have players who are already in that role, that jump ball sort of person. The difference is I expect us to be blowing out the ACC just like we have before. And I think the coaching staff may sub out some of these wide receivers and leave Beaux in with DJ just to see what sort of connection they do have down the field. So I'm not saying he's going to have 1,000 yards, but I could see him with a couple hundred yards, a couple touchdowns, just a couple highlight reel plays for this upcoming year.
Yeah, and we talk about our depth at wide receiver, and I talked about the fact that it's young. I mean, I think the oldest guy that we're really bringing back is Justin Ross. And he's been injured, so we don't really know what he's even going to look like next year, if he's even going to be able to play. I mean, we're hoping that he will be, but you're talking about these big players like EJ Williams, Nagata, Latson. They're all young, and Beaux Collins is obviously even younger, but he has a little bit of connection with DJ already. Mm-hmm. We typically rotate in a ton of guys at this position because we like fresh guys on the field. I see that if in reality Justin Ross doesn't go or is not 100% or only plays halftime, Beaux could have a huge part in this offense early on.
Yeah, and if you think back to the wide receivers that DJ had to throw to against Boston College and Notre Dame, all of those 3 wide receivers we're talking about were not available for those games. Latson and Gata and Justin Ross did not play those 2 games. So who he was throwing to is Amari Rogers, Cornell Powell. Neither one of those will be back next year. So he may have more rapport with Beaux Collins, who hasn't played with in a year or two, than he does with these current wide receivers. That might be a stretch. And obviously you have practice and all that sort of stuff. But he has not had time to build up rapport with these other wide receivers because the couple of games he was in, those receivers were not available to him. I think if Amari and Cornell were back, maybe a different story. But I think Beaux has every opportunity to make a decent-sized splash his freshman year.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, too, that Clemson will bring to Beaux Collins' game is this culture that DJ can immediately bring him into, bring him up to speed on everything that we do on a day-to-day basis for training. And watching film on Beaux, the one thing that really stood out to me was the way that he could get separation, specifically right at the end of the play when he was going up to get the ball. I mean, I didn't feel like he was amazing at getting off the stance. wasn't an amazing route runner, but when that ball was in the air and he was side by side with a CB, somehow every time when he went to make that catch, he somehow had 6 feet of separation, which that is hard to teach. And if he's got that already, the rest of that stuff, Clemson can teach him. The players in that locker room can teach him, and he could be big.
Yeah, I mean, you just cannot mention Beaux Collins without talking about Mike Williams and T. Higgins. You can't, like, the same knocks coming out of college. You can't separate, not enough high-end speed, and then it's like, oh, well, they can jump 9 feet in the air and just catch the ball and have great hands, and are basically basketball players, rebounding the ball above the CB and strong hands coming down. So, I think he's just the next wide receiver in that long line of wide receiver prodigies, essentially.
That's our breakdown. If you enjoy our content, help us out, like, subscribe to our channel, add a comment below. We'll be breaking down every single 2020 recruit from the 2021 Clemson class in the near future, so check out the Tiger Football Talk YouTube channel, and go Tigers!